order this 23rd day of April, 2025. The time is 7 p.m. Notice this meeting is being held in accordance with public laws of 1975. Chapter 231, an adequate notice meeting has been provided by a notice sent to the Asbury Park Press and Two River Times and posted here in the main lobby of the municipal building, as well as on the website. Roll call, please.
Mayor Portman,
Here.
Christina Bonisakis. Here. Ian Mancuso,
Here.
Lydia Manzo,
Here.
Barbara Boas. Here. Megan Massey absent, Wilson Bibi,
Here.
Itzel Hernandez. Here. Frederick Stone
Here.
and Brian Carnigan.
Here. Great. Thanks, everybody, for being here. We've got one item tonight, which is the continuation of the Red Bank Train Station Development Plan. We'll do the minutes at the end of the meeting. I know, I always forget, but you're gonna remind me. So our planner, Susan Favade, is here, and she's going to go over some changes that we would like to make to the zone before continuing our discussion. So Susan, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So there are a package of about 8 sets of changes that we've gone through. Most of these we talked about, or many of these we talked about from previous meetings. I'll just go through. The first set, probably the most significant, deals with height, setbacks, et cetera, the bulk district requirements, the bulk requirements for the redevelopment district A, which is the primary district we're talking about right there at the station. So the first change proposed is to reduce the maximum allowable building height along the Monmouth frontage from 6 stories to 5 stories. That would result in a loss of basically the upper story, as had been previously shown in renderings. It would remain 6 stories elsewhere on that site, where it faces the train station building itself. But on the Monmouth frontage, it would be 5 stories max, 5 stories, 60 feet, up to a depth of 25 feet in from Monmouth Street. Another change is the building setbacks, the minimum required setbacks both on Monmouth and West Streets proposed to be increased from 5 feet to 10 feet. And then lastly, in this category, the maximum non-residential building area is proposed to be capped. It already is controlled for floor air ratio, but then there would be a cap, a numerical cap of 30,000 square feet on the north parcel, closer to Monmouth Street, and then 17,000 square feet on the south parcel, south of Chestnut Street. So those are the changes on the bulk requirements. A couple other things that we've talked about in terms of building massing, design, and articulation. There have been discussion about adding the word meaningful to the discussion of vertical breaks in the building to make even more clear the intent of that regulation and give the planning board a little bit more teeth when it comes down to site plan review to require that breaking up of the massing. Second proposed change here is to allow balconies or cantilevered structures or portions of the structure to extend, as long as they're above the ground floor, to extend up to 5 feet into the required setback. This would basically allow some flexibility on the building so that you can get those increased ground floor setbacks, come in more at the ground floor, and then you could allow a little flexibility on upper stories. We've seen that done in a couple of other examples in town, and it does help also to break up the massing of the building. Another change that really is the result of the change of maximum height on Monmouth Street. There had been some language in the discussion of the Monmouth Street circulation and access principles that had some language allowing for some flexibility on heights above 5 stories. And that language has now been removed, supposed to be removed. It's no longer relevant if you're not allowing more than 5 stories along Monmouth Street. This change we had discussed on West Street. There is a graphic that had been already in the draft that really kind of tries to accentuate the low scale residential desired character of West Street. Some language has been added to accompany that graphic, making clear that individual apartment entrances with things like stoops, steps, porticos, and similar types of architecture are encouraged. Another change on historic assets. This came out of comments at public hearings. There's language that previously contemplated relocating some historic assets, preserving them, but relocating them, and that language is now proposed to be deleted. to make clear that all the historic assets that are on the site are to be preserved in place, not be removed. Next change is a little bit of a wonky change. There is proposed to be added that if the historic train station building is ever subdivided into a separate parcel, that may be something that New Jersey Transit and the developer have agreement on, that if that becomes its own parcel, that it will not be subject to the bulk requirements of the overall district. We don't necessarily know that that's going to happen, but the concern was that if that's how they sort of implemented the plan, then all of a sudden you're creating a lot of non-conformities that really weren't intended to be created. So really the intent, whether it's its own parcel or it stays within the overall parcel, is that the building itself obviously is preserved, it's a historic asset, and that the entire area around the building is an integral part of that public plaza. So it's a little bit of nuts and bolts, but really just wanted to avoid unintended variance conditions. There was some language previously regarding the shared street where it said that a shared street shall be provided on the north parcel. The word shall is a little bit restrictive and kind of dictates that that's what it needs to be. And so the proposed language makes that a little bit more flexible. I don't think that the intent was to necessarily require a shared street, but if the shared street was provided, there were certain provisions that would govern. So the language is proposed to be revised to indicate that a shared street is proposed. And any new street is subject to the borough engineer's approval. It really ensures that all potential new streets get that approval by the borough. And then there are still provisions that govern the design of a shared street if that's provided. And then the last change is something new on the proposed offsite improvements or potential offsite improvements. There already is a map that shows a potential north-south connection between Doctors Parker Boulevard and Chestnut Street. Kind of a long-term change along the rail yard right of way. An additional opportunity is now shown on that map and described in the text that would look for an additional north-south pedestrian walkway using the passenger rail right of way. So it's a little bit farther to the east, a little bit closer to Maple Street. There may be some room there. Again, this is a long-term proposition. I think New Jersey Transit would be concerned about obviously safety, security, so they would have quite a role in the implementation of that.
Yeah, we're not sure that New Jersey Transit's going to go for that, but we really think that having that pedestrian walkway from Maple Avenue or from Dr. Parker Boulevard, essentially across from the daycare center where the tracks are, there's quite a bit of room. Whether there's enough room or not for New Jersey Transit to put up a fence and feel like there's enough room from the train station from this pedestrian walkway, we don't know. But we would like to see it. And I think it would certainly shave some time off of people's walks if they were walking to the train station, so they wouldn't have to go all the way down Maple and turn left on Chestnut and take that full route. They could do a diagonal route. I don't know how much time it would save, but it would save someone time walking. We're not quite sure there's enough room for that pedestrian walkway. Ultimately, that's going to be New Jersey Transit's decision, but we very much wanted to make it part of the plan.
Having it in the plan just puts it out there. It'll never happen if you don't have it in the plan. So having it in the plan is a good first step. So those are the changes proposed. I think that the changes on Monmouth Street are a significant improvement and will help to set the buildings back, break those up a bit more, make them a little bit less boxy. The height will come down, and that'll be a little bit more in keeping with the surrounding context of Monmouth Street, which I think has been, of concern. We heard repeatedly from the public as well as the board members. So those are the proposals. I think you all were sent the memo as well as the change papers. So otherwise, the rest of the plan remains intact. Happy to answer questions or take comments.
So I'm happy to have anyone from the public come up with any comments or questions about the changes to the plan.
Yeah, Dan, I think you have board members who want to.
Okay, hang on a sec. I would please encourage you not to come up and say the same thing you said last time. At some point during your testimony, I will remember that you're repeating yourself and I'll stop you. So I would like some new information. This was a big change, what we've put forth so far. And keep in mind, this isn't a site plan yet. We're not there yet. That's going to come later in the year when we actually get a plan from the developer. This is the zoning for someone to build here, not an actual site plan. So that, we're gonna do this, it's gonna feel like all over again. Because we're gonna talk about a lot of the same things later this year. So go ahead, Wilson.
Susan, thank you. A couple questions, actually three. With the area height setback and density requirements, the change in the commercial, the capping of the commercial space to 30,000 feet of the north parcel and 17,000 feet. So how much of a change is that from what was in the ratios?
It's not an enormous
Approximately.
change. And I wish I had the numbers right in front of me. Under the floor area ratios, which are a minimum, and well, they're based, well, I'm sorry, they are a maximum, but they're based on the lot size. It was like 38,000 or so, if I recall, 38,000 on the north parcel. I mean, don't rely too much on that, but it was under 40, as I recall. And then on the south parcel, it was, maybe in the 20s. So not an enormous, step down, but a cap nonetheless, which should give a little bit of comfort. I know that was a concern about the amount of non-residential space. So it's not a drastic reduction. It's not going to significantly change the mixed use character of those buildings, but it is a bit of a.
Thank you. On the West Street access, why are we using the language encouraged? If we think from a design perspective, that's what we ought to have, why don't we stipulate it?
Want to say preferred, required, shall be provided?
What's the sentence?
Oh, okay, for me, this is why and this why.
Yeah.
Individual apartment entrances with stoop steps, porticos, and similar features are encouraged. You would rather it be required?
Myself
Shall be
personally, I would stipulate that as a requirement, because I think it makes a big difference in the character of that side along West Street, the breakup of the facade, the sense of community, but on one person. I mean, I would be happy if the chairman would entertain it to make that motion at some point in the proceedings.
And anybody have an opinion on that? I don't. I'm fine with it either way.
I agree. I think that a lot of the discomfort that I'm hearing from residents is that these are lifeless buildings and they are just like building and the planning needs of
Architectural feature, because at this point, we don't know necessarily. If I think we've given them kind of the range.
Oh, I know, but once you say required, what are we required? It's not clear. It's saying it should, you have to have this,
Requiring
that.
individual entrances, which is a big thing. And then you would be requiring architectural features that accentuate those individual entrances and more in keeping with the low scale residential nature of the surrounding area.
And when they come in on the site plan, they're gonna have to show those and
They comply.
that they comply with all those conditions. And if they say, well, we think we comply, and you say, well, we're the planning board, and we say,
You don't.
you don't, they're gonna have to comply. Right.
You have to grant.
You don't have to grant it.
Right, I mean,
That's it.
thank you. You would have to grant if that's what they were able to do. Yeah, in order for them to do what they want, you would have to grant.
They would have to apply for a variance and ask you to grant it. You would not be required to grant it unless they met the criteria.
Yeah, I think that's a really important change on that question. Thank you. And then last, on the shared street. Seemed to me that was like a pretty great idea. Why would we go from shall to if you choose? What's the thinking?
That was something that, you know, I really should caught because the word shall means this is
Yeah,
what you will
You
do.
will do, right?
Whereas should gives you a little bit of leeway. And so, you know, I think we all think that the shared street's gonna happen and that's what's proposed. And I think generally there's support for that. But if they, for some reason, didn't have quite a shared street on the full extent or chose a different design alternative that the board might also be okay with, it felt a little bit too binding to say shall. So I just thought it would be helpful to give a little bit of flexibility just because at this stage, we still don't know, like the chairman said, we don't have a site plan. in front
Yeah,
of us.
when we see an actual site plan, we can hang our hat on should if we want.
Is that the language? Should?
Should. Well, good question.
What page is that, Wilson?
It's on page 26.
26.
I mean, you could always, listen, I have no leg in this fight, but you could leave it shall if the board's so inclined, and if they don't want to do a shall, then they could ask for the variance. Say, we don't believe a shared street is appropriate, but I leave that
I'm all
to the
for
board.
no variance 2025, by the way.
Yeah,
Let everybody know that now.
so if it says shall, it's shall.
Right now, the proposed language, right now it says shall incorporate, but the proposed language would say on the north parcel of redevelopment district A shared street is proposed. And then later in the paragraph, the design of any shared street shall complement adjacent public space and use design features, et cetera. So that's all existing language. So an alternative, I think what you're asking for, Will, says potentially, we could just change the one word from shall to should. Which would, it would say north parcel of redevelopment district A should incorporate.
But that's what you're asking for.
Yeah, well, I didn't do it.
Right now it says shall.
It says shall,
So what Wilson's saying is leave it shall.
leave it
The
shall.
proposal you have is for proposed.
Yeah, it's proposed.
I'm okay with should. It was like when my mother told me that I should eat my vegetables. She meant that I shall.
And there's.
And I think we could really kind of go in that direction when the time comes, if we think especially New Jersey Transit is interested in that as well. Again, we don't have a site plan, so we don't know for sure.
That's an easy thing, it's just swap the one word, should, or shall to should. And there's language elsewhere in the plan toward the end that talks about the meaning of shall versus should.
Should have been.
Yeah, I can go to war over should. Totally okay with that.
So what's the, just so everyone's on the same page, what would the language read under your proposal?
Parcel of redevelopment district A should incorporate a shared street between new mixed-use buildings and the New Jersey Transit right of way, and the rest of the paragraph is.
Okay, okay. So that's what it would read.
How is shared street defined?
It's defined later, just.
It's defined in A.
It is, okay.
Street, also known as the word one of, are designed to accommodate all roadway users through elements like decorative pavements, lighting, curbs that are flush with the pavement. So it goes into like.
Okay.
And members of the board have any questions for Susan about the change, proposed changes?
Well, hopping off the story at the Monmouth Street side, how does it change the total square footage and how does it change the potential number of units that can be built?
I think it's about 3 or 4 units at most. And that wouldn't necessarily be a total reduction. They may go elsewhere on the parcels. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna reduce the number of units, it just might reshuffle them. The other question was.
What is it?
square footage, I think?
For units?
Yeah, so you essentially answered
Yeah, it's.
Yeah.
A few apartments.
a few. Very precise, thank you.
Anyone else on the board? Does anyone else in the public have any questions or comments for Susan so far? Ally? Please restate your name and address, and please, from seeing some of the spelling of the addresses that was on our end, please spell the street you live on.
The mic doesn't work, so just speak up.
Alan Hill, 64 McLaren Street. That's McLaren, McLaren, McLaren Street. I hope you get that right for the record, for the minutes, because I just want to make a point. No minutes have been made available to this meeting. And especially, as is normal, not even to the public. You, Mr. Mancuso, have asked people not to repeat their points from last meeting. I don't know. I can't remember what I said last meeting. I've got a general idea.
Mr. Hill, there wouldn't be any minutes from the last meeting that would be made available to the public because they won't be adopted until tonight. So it's impossible to have released the minutes ahead of time.
Mr. Leckstein.
Yeah, it's Steen, it's Leckstein.
Mr. Leckstein, I do.
Thank you, sir.
You are no doubt familiar with Robert's rules.
I am very familiar with Robert's rule.
Public meeting.
I'm very aware.
A meeting, the minutes of a public meeting are the public's property. They are up to it is the meeting.
The minutes have to be approved, sir.
The meeting should be put to the meeting, they're not the board's meeting. Now, I don't want to get bogged down.
No, sir, you're wrong. So let me finish, Mr. Hill. So let me finish. Minutes are they're the representation of what occurred at a board meeting, at a council meeting, at any meeting. There's no such thing as minutes being released prior to the board meeting to adopt those minutes. If there was an error in those minutes and they got out ahead of time without the board looking at them, then they would be misleading as to what occurred at the meeting. So the board will adopt the minutes from the last meeting at this meeting, and the second that they're adopted, they'll be put online, as is the normal course of business, and it has been done in history for the last 100 some odd years or more that minutes have been required. They're never released in advance. They never are.
I can't speak for the last 100 years. I do know this, that mayor and council meetings do print draft minutes. And it is important because myself, I have gone through those minutes and found my comments either misrepresented. I have found my address put in wrongly, stuff like that. Tell the mayor that he's not to put out minutes.
Well, I'm not going to advise the mayor and council on what they do. If you submit draft minutes to the public before the meeting, that's up to the council. It's not, this board does not, and this board never has, and most boards do not. So I just want to correct that. So it's inappropriate to criticize the board that they didn't release minutes that haven't been adopted by the board yet.
I'd like to hear that from the chair.
I am rarely ever going to disagree with our attorney. The minutes are on the agenda. I move them to the end of the meeting merely to get to the point of why everyone's here tonight. And we will approve them tonight before we leave, and they will then be announced to the public or released to the public.
Okay, on to questions. As usual, the public has turned up to a consultation meeting with either very little notice or even no notice of changes made to the plan. We have spent the last 20 minutes listening to the board discuss memos, and we're sat here not knowing what the hell is going on. You know, it's just contemptuous of the community in this town to carry on like that. And to move on, it's also typical of the consultation that this document has received over the past, now it amounts to virtually 18 months now, since December, 2023, when any number of alterations have come out. And even on occasions being faced like a day's notice with a 235-page document for us to brief ourselves and go through. Not to mention consultation meetings, the workshops. I'm not even going to go into them, what a travesty those were. But here's But I'm going to ask an important point now. I notice on the last draft, a company called Perkins Easterman appeared on the, as consultants. When did this board engage Perkins Eastman as a consultant?
They are part of the BFJ team.
And I've looked up, as you can imagine, I've looked up, and they're a big architectural firm, yes?
I don't recall if they're more architectural or engineering.
Architectural engineering, and you can assure me, Mr. Mancuso, that they have no connection with the Denholtz business.
I could not imagine that we would hire someone connected to the development, the New Jersey
Nice.
Transit's chosen developer.
Thank you. Will that question be minuted and your answer be?
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, so we also then have heard that these changes, and height setbacks, public space, blah, blah, have been varied by discussions.
The only discussions that took place since our last meeting was Susan, Shauna, and I to talk about some proposed changes that all three of us thought from the public meeting that we thought were necessary for the zone. And those were what you heard Susan detail tonight.
And at no point in those discussions were Denholtz's negotiating points raised with you.
What do you mean?
I mean that Denholtz, I'm going to say, was amenable to discussing setbacks, but wasn't amenable to setting the height variation, if that's the right word, which implies to me that this plan, which is supposed to be discussed for the benefit of the town, is actually having input from Denholtz. And I want to know if that's happening. That's a travesty, once again.
Well, New Jersey Transit is also involved, as it is also their land, involved in the zone.
So when the town sets our plan, we're setting a plan that's already been negotiated with these people. We're not setting what we want it to be. We're setting, we're conceding already to Denholtz, to New Jersey. Already we know that both those, New Jersey, we know that the motives New Jersey Transit are in on this aren't for the betterment of this town. We know it's because they got catastrophic traffic numbers on this branch of the railway, in fact, the whole system. And they're looking at it as a last chance to actually get more customers on the rail. They don't care about this. They don't care about us. Denholtz has gone from being a local builder to being a gazillionaire's fund manager in the last 18 months. I see one or two people on the DOC who just, you know what? Those are facts. Now I'm asking you if anybody in this room, particularly officers of this town council, have been involved in negotiations with Denholtz over this plan.
Denholtz has seen the plan. And I will tell you that there are parts of it that they don't like. And I have told them, and I've asked our representatives to tell them more than once, that I don't care what they like. I'm interested in doing what I think, and I think the rest of the members are as well, doing what is best for the town. New Jersey Transit has chosen that developer to work with. And they have seen the zone plan.
Seeing the zone plan's different than coming back and saying, we want this, we'll give you a little bit on it, give you a little bit. That's all I wanted to say, Mr. Mancuso.
Thank you.
I just want people to recognize what a travesty this has been.
Well, that's your opinion. You're certainly entitled to it. It's misguided as I think it is.
I'm making a judgment on you. Don't you judge me.
If you're making a judgment on me, sir, it goes both ways.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But you're in public office. I am just a
Volunteer.
public office. And you have to take fair comment. I am not a citizen. You probably know that as well. But I am taxed without representation. I represent myself. But I do not come to places like this, have you making insinuations about me.
Well, you've done the same thing about this board and our people.
You've got to know the difference between fair comment and your position as elected appointees.
Look, we're not going to sit here and have a back and forth, Mr. Hill. It's inappropriate.
Ma'am, come on up.
Marjorie Cavalier, One Bridge, BRIDGE Avenue, Red Bank. First of all, I want to thank the change about the historic elements not being moved. I just wanted to make sure if you could just list what you view to be the historic elements.
And I retract my statement about spelling your street. It just sounds so ridiculous when people do it. So I'll help Shauna for any of the street that doesn't know how to spell, because it really sounds ridiculous when you have to spell your street.
So the ones that are specifically named are the Mayor O'Hearn marker, the Gatekeeper's booth, the Count Basie bust, and I didn't know what to call it, but the circular.
The medallion that has a map of New Jersey
Yes,
on it.
it's in the pavement.
Okay, that's great. That's what I kind of refer as the historic triangle there.
First form.
Okay, and then the question that I have, because again, I haven't seen if this fits into that same zone. The other concern I had was relocating the bus route onto putting more onto West Street, which is very residential. So that aspect has not changed.
That has not changed. That is where New Jersey Transit has at this time, where they prefer it. That obviously needs a lot more analysis and study, and that's all baked into the plan that, you know, the circulation route, the turning movements, all that has to be agreed upon between New Jersey Transit, the developer, the borough, everybody's got to be on the same page with that. So there's some more work to be done.
Yeah, I just considering the number of pedestrian accidents in town. And that I believe is a really hot corner where you have the buses, you have the trains, you know, you have many more traffic coming into that at certain times of the day. And to more on West Street, which is narrower than Monmouth Street, I think will lead to additional problems.
I think a lot of the problems actually on Monmouth are because of all the curb cuts and the different ways people are coming in and out, and that is creating potential for all. So actually, you know, rationalizing those and streamlining them with fewer curb cuts, I think should improve the overall pedestrian.
Yeah, I mean, I've almost been hit with a pedestrian walk.
Yeah.
And when I challenged the person, they said, well, what do you want me to do? Go to confession? You know, so I almost,
That's a start.
well, I mean, so, you know, I'm just saying it's a very dangerous section of town. It's not the only one. But I think if we can be very strong in negotiating, that would assuage
I did read.
my concern considerably. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Come on up, man.
Emily Frischella, 49 Oakland Street. So would there be any way, ma'am, on the West Street side, that would still be 6 stories?
Yes.
Yes.
So I don't,
5-story reduction is just fronting Monmouth.
okay,
Yeah.
so I don't know if you're familiar with like the lofts over West Elm. The top floor of the lofts kind of looks slightly set back from the other stories. Would they be able to add some stipulation about that in there, just because it's mostly residential off of West Street, like she just said? And it will just be like a huge wall looming over that side of the neighborhood. And I think if they absolutely needed 6 stories, like to have the 6-story set back slightly somehow, maybe those balconies will be on top of the 5th story, would make a lot of difference.
I think it's a little difficult on West because there's the parking garage that they need to mask with the rest of the apartments. But one point also is that the Juanito's restaurant site on the corner they're not going anywhere. So everything on West, the extent of Juanito's is sort of behind Juanito's. So it's not the entire block West. It's about half of
Okay.
almost up to Oakland. So
How far down Oakland are you?
I'm right across from the charter school. And then I also do agree with the bus stop being moved on West Street, like when kids are going to field hockey, like they're coming out of between parked cars like a game of Frogger, like I'm constantly slamming on my brakes over there. People are always stopped where it's painted yellow and it literally says no stopping or standing and kids are unloading. I've literally had people pop the trunk at the stop sign. They didn't pull over at the stop sign, but like literally stop at the stop sign, pop the trunk. Like it's a very weird intersection and I really hope New Jersey Transit takes that into consideration with moving the bus stop.
And they'll be here, I assume they'll be here. I would like them to be here.
Yeah,
They're here now.
Yeah.
I would like them to speak. I know they don't want to, but I'd.
yeah, but that
At some
intersection.
point they will, and that is a concern of ours as well, is the bus circulation on the site. It just is, and it's there now, and it's not gonna go away, but any opportunity to make it better, I would certainly like that.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else from the public? Come on up, Brian. Not Brian, why'd I call him? Dan, Jesus, it's my name.
Dan Reardon, 20 Irving Place. So my understanding of the way that this process goes is we've heard from the beginning of the process that this is much better than zoning because we can put specific requirements on the developer.
On the zone,
Isn't this the spot at which we put those specific requirements on?
many, yes, not specific to a site plan because we don't have one, but to the zone itself, as if you were rezoning downtown.
But when the site plan comes in, you'll have to review it like any other site plan.
For variances based on
And-
what we're doing here tonight.
Yeah, and it's going to be an up or down vote, but so you won't have any more control when the site plan comes in than you would if you were just doing a regular application.
Any more than the regular zone, no, you're correct.
This is the spot where we need to get specific as we're going to get. We don't have an opportunity later to get specific. So
Not to do less necessarily than the zone says. Like if you only want a 4-story building like the Rail, now is the time.
yeah,
I'm not encouraging everyone to stand up and say that. While I would agree with you.
I do in fact want a 4-story building, but some things that I think would be good to put in there are some green requirements. There is no green requirements at all. There's a few suggestions. And the plan says, we're great. We help with the Monmouth County Master Plan goal of having more green infrastructure. And then there's no green infrastructure in it. They don't have to have a green roof. They don't have to have anything. They don't have to be LEED certified. They don't have to do anything green at all. And you can't make them do green things when the site plan comes in. So this is the time to make them build a green building.
What page is that on?
I have to.
Yeah, Shauna is showing me on page 27 where it's got item J, sustainable green design.
There are a number of practices that are encouraged, but it also says.
You change the numbers, the page numbers.
Some of the pagination may have shifted.
Yeah.
My apologies.
Here we go.
It says new buildings in redevelopment district A shall meet NJEDA green building shall meet. So there is no choice here. If
Okay.
they don't meet it, it's variance. Request. It shall meet NJEDA green building standards for type 1 construction or equivalent levels of sustainability achievement, and then the reference there. I believe that those are comparable to LEED, the EDA requirements, and So it's not a choice in that matter. And then, but there are a number of ways that you could get there. And so that language talks about things like energy efficiency, LED lighting, green roofs, those types of strategies.
But, well, it doesn't seem green enough to me. The other thing that,
Yeah, hold on, I want to just stay on this for 1 second, Dan, because building on it, so the language that it says, right, it gives a whole list of, you know, low impact development, green stormwater infrastructure, green core roofs, and then at the end, the whole paragraph says these things are encouraged.
Yeah.
Is there, I guess, based on what Dan is saying, right, is there? Obviously you don't list all of them because some of them are, you know, maybe not possible here, but
if they're not,
is there any language that we can put in here? I mean,
Yeah, not to parse words, but you could use the word should rather than encourage, because should has a heavier weight. Shall is a requirement. I wouldn't want to require specific strategies because we just don't know what's going to work on that side of that building.
but if it doesn't work, then the board can be convinced of that and give a variance.
You could. I like shall better than encourage. My mother didn't encourage us to eat vegetables. Okay, it's much stronger than encourage. So I'm okay with shall. Yeah,
So they.
I realize we're gonna have to rewrite that quite a bit to maybe fit that in, but
Grammarly.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, may have to. Right now, the way that it reads is a whole list of things,
Mhm.
and just adding the word shall would require them to do all of those things. Which wouldn't be possible, so.
Could we use should?
Language like
I mean, it's a brand new building. It's hard to believe.
strategies and
Yeah.
use of these types of strategies shall.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that they can't make this as green as possible. And I don't mean that that's whatever the top lead level is.
Yeah, it's a totally
Yeah.
different
Thing.
I think that should would be strong enough at this point in time because we have no clue as to where they're going. We can always shall them later. But right now, I think that should is a strong enough word for this particular phase. I don't know. I don't like may or encourage, but I think should would, it shall is with that list. If it were just one thing or one specific, but that list is pretty long and you know how many variances we'll have to clear through if they decide not to do any of them. So I think if we put should, everybody would be happier.
Yeah, I think deciding not to do any of them is a non-starter.
Yeah.
I would just say, first of all, I'm in favor of all of these things, as
Yeah,
many
well-
of these things as we can get, but the second sentence as it stands is, if I'm reading this correctly, sustainable/green site and building design methods shall be incorporated to the maximum extent practicable and will be required in the future redeveloper agreement. So there is a shall
Yeah, I missed a shall.
ahead of that whole list, which is then a little bit.
There,
So what's the encouraged language then? Because that seems to be not consistent then.
Right.
Right.
it's either shall or.
It can't be both. Unless the context is different. I just don't have it. Okay.
And to greatest extent practicable, right? That,
Yeah, I think the intent of that long list was, here are examples of how you can get there, and you have to do it.
Out.
Mhm.
Here's a bunch of strategies, and so we can work on that to make it not able to be wiggled out.
Right.
I have a question related to this about solar. Is there any opportunity to have solar panels in this project?
We don't know at this point. I mean, there may be,
They're two separate clauses.
depends on the design of the roof.
But if we don't,
You shall use.
It's in the list there under the encouraged one.
Type of things that we are.
I would think that a kind of halfway between, we could require some of them that we think are most important. And like, I remember the VNA thing. We had a list of 10 things ranging from bike racks to solar. What do you think they chose? two bike racks or something like
Bike
that.
racks are a different section and they're required.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, if you give a list,
And that fancy dog pooping thing on the roof too.
yeah,
They wanted to do it. I'm looking forward to seeing what that actually looks like.
Yeah, so I have the text in front of me, and I think they're two separate clauses is what's going on here. So they shall use the sustainable green site design methods, but then it says as examples, the use of low impact development, green stormwater infrastructure, green cool roofs, blah, so on, are encouraged. So if you want to get rid of that last are encouraged, I think I would put like should be incorporated. Is everybody happy with that? Does that make sense?
yeah, but I'm still concerned about the solar. I think that,
In the list.
is there a way, yeah, it's in the list, but they won't adapt it unless they'll adapt the cheapest thing they could do. It's just a given. We can't assume they're gonna say, oh, I'll take the hardest thing.
Well, in a 5 or 6 story building, they're certainly not going to achieve enough coverage in solar to make a significant impact on the building if it's 5 or 6 stories tall, are they?
Mr. Chairman, if I can, just, Mr. Menta, just to let you know, if it says should be incorporated, they would have to come and give you a reason why they're not incorporating it, which the board could then.
It's in every element?
Yeah, because it's not saying, here's your list of 1 through 10, pick 2. It's saying, here's your list, all these things should be incorporated. So I think you're protected. And when they come in on the site plan application, if for some reason they say, look, this building just wouldn't support solar panels, I'm just using it as an example, you could say, okay, that makes sense at that time, but they couldn't just walk in and say, we decided not to pick solar panels, we're only putting up a bike rack. They couldn't do that in that case if you say all these things need to be incorporated. So I think you're safe.
I wish I could,
The language that's already here in the section 4 underneath that requires them to meet these NJEDA green building standards. There's only gonna be certain ways that they can get to those standards, so.
Right, right.
It's gonna be
So,
on this list, basically.
yeah, I think again, if you just put should be incorporated instead of are encouraged, I think you're catching everything. They can't walk in and say, we decide as the developer, we're not gonna do this. They can't do, and the board just say, oh, okay. No, it doesn't work that way. I don't know exactly what was going on with the VNA. It may have been a list that they were able to pick and choose from. That's not what this language would allow them to do.
hope not.
And for
It
the
isn't.
VNA, it would depend on what the zone there said. We're writing the zone now.
That was it. They wrote the zone. He wrote the zone.
Yeah,
Did we write the zone?
That was the zone. That was a redevelopment area.
it is a redevelopment plan.
God, okay.
It was a choose your own adventure.
Was it?
Right, and this is not.
The dog thing, that was like, really? You're gonna let the dogs pee on the roof?
And I think that's appropriate. If that's what the VNA, again, I wasn't here for VNA, but if VNA was more or less a choose your own adventure, this language is not a choose your own adventure. You are saying these things should be incorporated.
As I recall, it was pick X number for certain.
Okay.
They could get more, they got more density if they
Yeah.
enacted 6 of it out of 10.
Oh, okay. Well, that's not what this is.
Well, it's a good thing you're here, Dan. What else you got?
So they're just on the bike racks, just so you know, they can't use the ones that are already at the train station.
Like boxes?
All right, so another thing that we could demand now and we can't demand later is that walkway to Dr. James Parker Boulevard. Our best chance of getting that is to require it now.
Why is that necessary?
You know, if it's a should, okay, but something to more than just, we envision this somewhere down the line. That's what my reading of it was.
Well, it's along the right of way of the train station. I cannot imagine there isn't a place somewhere in New Jersey they've got something like this, and I'll bet you New Jersey Transit has a design standard that if you want to walk next to their train, you need X number of feet. I don't know what that is. I'd be blown away if that wasn't out there already at New Jersey Transit. But we're saying we'd like it. We've said where we'd like it. They might say, no, you need 75 feet, which I know we don't have. I think we have 30 or 40 feet in places.
Mhm.
But I don't know how close they're willing to put a fence to the tracks and then leave room and then prepare that ground for people to walk or ride bikes on. But we have it, we've added it to the plan
Mhm.
and we're saying we'd like it.
Okay,
Can I ask a question about that particular thing? I'm concerned about the safety of that. I mean, you're talking about having this thing, and I'm reading weekly the numbers of people who have been hit by trains and died in New Jersey this year already. I think that this is playing with dynamite to put that there with kids running between the schools, running after school. I see how they ride down the middle of the streets on their bicycles. What's gonna happen at the railroads, at a walkway so close to the railroads? I would really like to put that on hold and see what a safety engineer has to say and what happens, because I really am very nervous about that.
Well, they're gonna have probably a 6 or 8 foot fence.
Have you ever seen a 12-year-old climb a fence?
I was 12.
I mean,
There's gonna be a bunch of engineers on this.
I
at
know,
that
because
time.
I'm just talking about the safety factor right now, and I think that we should have some question marks after that.
Seems to me, this is more of an ask than a demand because the developer doesn't control these rights of way.
Oh, this is all New Jersey Transit.
Right.
This wish is all New Jersey
This is
Transit.
sort of, it's, a little bit removed from the core redeveloper plan.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But we see it. And I've walked down there, I'll admit it. Without the 8 foot fence and not been run over by a train. And I think someone who wants to be hit by a train, Lord knows there is plenty of places to do that in town. 'Cause I
Absolutely.
listen to it all night long.
I do too.
They love to blow that horn like they're getting paid just to blow the horn.
Right. Well, maybe they.
And I realize no one wants to go down the road of trying to get an exemption. I get that. This is the busiest grade crossing on the New Jersey Transit line. But I wanted to make sure we mention this so they know we're looking for something like this.
All right.
Do I think New Jersey Transit is gonna go for this? No, I don't.
Yeah. Okay.
Because
I'm
you're
just-
right, kids can climb a fence, but if you wanna get hit by a train, just go down by the station and get hit by the train or go over by my
Yeah,
house.
but I mean, those are the ones who are doing it intentionally. And statistics show that 85% of the people who were hit by trains did it intentionally, which is very sad. And, but if we're providing a walkway, a bike way.
Well, New Jersey Transit's providing it, so hopefully we'll sue them,
Yes, but,
not us.
but I just don't want my
When they step
grandkids
in front of the train.
run over by trains, I mean, if because their brains are not working properly
The
until,
greatest part about being a child.
I know, but not.
What else you got, Dan?
I meant to mention this when I was talking about green stuff. 85% impervious seems really high. Maybe that mixed use street could be some sort of permeable, maybe they should have some permeable surfaces.
Did you wanna run buses over all day long?
No, not on West Street, on the shared, whatever that thing is.
I hate pavers, but sure, whatever.
So I was looking at the density and of course, I think the density is already too high. But if we take, the north parcel is pretty easy to figure out what the area of it is. They say it's 3.5 acres. That 3.5 acres includes the train tracks and the parking lot that's not being developed. So it seems to me that New Jersey Transit is not going to turn over control of the train tracks to Denholtz. They're not going to lease it to them. They're not going to sell it to them. So it's not going to be part of this development parcel. So you're really looking at 2.2 acres, which gives you a density more like 90 per acre. So I think the density is way too high. And I think before you even talk about density, we ought to be talking about, okay, what is the area? So what are the 4 acres in the south parcel? It's not defined anywhere. Quarters of those 4 acres isn't defined anywhere, and I couldn't make anything come to 4 acres. But so I think the plan should delineate what the redevelopment area is, what is covered by this plan. Because the vast majority of the train yard is not covered. The vast majority of the right of way going south, going both south and southeast is not covered. but they are part of this redevelopment plan. It seems like they ought to be pulled out. Let's see, parking. So, on page 13, well, page 13 of my version, under parking, it says available public parking. There is available public parking within walking distance. What public parking? Lots, you can only park there for 4 hours. Useless to someone who's living in an apartment and needs a place to park. The only place they can park is on the street. They can't park in any of the lots. So I don't think that there is available public parking within walking distance. Certainly people complain when they have to walk from those lots to the Count Basie or.
Every time I go meet Lupita's, I park on Bridge Avenue in front of the restaurant across the street every single time. Now, I don't go in the middle of the day and I don't park there at 9 in.
If there are 400 more apartments with people who only get part of a parking space per apartment, you won't be parking in front of Meat Pizzas. Well, it'll be gone anyway.
Gone, so I won't care.
It'll be gone. The other thing is I kind of did some calculation on bike parking. My understanding is that non-residential is going to be limited to 30,000 for the north part, for the north section, 30,000 square feet. And at the parking requirements, that's going to generate a requirement of 75 to 120 parking spaces. And at one bike parking space per 20 non-residential spaces, that's between 4 and 6 bike parking spaces. Seems a little light.
That's just on the non-residential portion. The residential
Right.
portion has its own bike parking requirements as well.
But is the residential one available to the public or is it for the residents? Like it sounded like at least part of it had to be indoors in a secure area. I'm just thinking people go to the train station, they're gonna need more than 4. I would hope that we'll need more than 4 to 6 parking spaces, bike parking spaces.
For the residential, at least half of them have to be inside secured. The rest could be outside, and those generally are open to anybody. I haven't seen multifamily developers restrict them to only their residents. They're outside.
Susan, what do you think about increasing that 4 number? Doubling that to 8? It certainly seems like we have the room for it.
And I think the ratio would need to be 1 bicycle space for every 10. Double it, because right now it's 1 for every 20.
Okay, I'm all right with that if everybody else is okay with that.
And then the last thing, I'm just not happy with how tall it is and how close it is to the sidewalk.
Well, we did move it.
Yeah, I'm encouraged to hear that it's 10 feet off the thing now. That's better, but it's still going to be on West Street, 70-foot wall rising 10 feet off this, from 10 feet off the sidewalk. I think it should be 4 stories, and it should be, the setback in that zone is 30 feet. It should be somewhere, something like 30 feet.
Where do we have 30 feet for a big building anywhere in town?
And whose fault is that? Just saying. I didn't write the rules. I'm just.
30 feet seems like a lot to me.
They just in that kind of mixed use downtown type.
Yeah.
It's more like seller-oriented commercial.
The other odd thing to me is there's actually a negative 10-foot setback on the Oakland stub. They actually are building their building 10 feet into the right of way. Seems weird to me. How is that? How do they're not leasing it from us, are they?
The borough would have to vacate that public street. So that'll be part of the, if that happens, that would be part of the redevelopment agreement with the borough.
Okay,
It would become a pedestrian only.
okay. That's everything.
Thank you. Anyone else in the public have any comments or questions? Come on up, Bill. I didn't see you, Suzanne. We'll do you next.
Good evening, board. My name is William Boku 90 Bank Street. Apologize for not coming in a little sooner, but I was in the library preparing for this meeting. So my understanding, hearing someone talk about page 14 of something in the presentation, which I missed, says to me that something else has been shared, at least with the public and some folks, that.
Development plan itself that we're talking about is on the borough website.
Okay, all right. So I'd like to kind of add a little bit more onto what Mr. Alan Hill said about agendas. Because I looked up for agendas on the public website, and there's nothing for 2025. Nothing published for 2025. The only agenda items that can be seen on the redbanknj.org agendas, agenda site for the planning board is just for 2024 and past. So
I'm just pretending.
the issue is that for people like me and others that want to look at past minutes, what transpired and all that, we're pretty much very limited in terms of, it's like if a Martian just got here on the spaceship and wanted to know what was going on in Red Bank, they would be basically limited to 2024 and previous. And maybe you can speak to that. Maybe I'm not looking at the right spot.
I just went to the new website. I searched planning board agenda. A couple of clicks later, I'm looking at an April 9th agenda. It's there.
Talking about,
I just did the same thing.
excuse me?
I just did the same thing. I just looked on my phone. I got the agenda right away.
Okay, I'm talking about minutes, past minutes for, I heard of minutes being approved the last time that we were here. There are no minutes for the last meeting that we,
I'll go down to that.
that we attended. None of the minutes for 2025 have been published. Is there anybody else in the public? Yeah, I see somebody else nodding,
Like, I just found the March 26th minutes. You go to the actual meeting date, and on the left are the agenda packet, and the actual minutes, and you click the little download arrow, and the minutes just popped up for March 26th. They're there.
All right, so I must apologize then, because then that's something that I've wrestled with. I also spoke with the librarian, Mary Ellen Mess. He basically shared the same thing. So we will work on trying to get squared away with that. Okay, so that was not on my agenda of what I wanted to talk today about, but I just thought I'd throw in something in support of Mr. Hill. Now I get on to what I prepared for. Basically, there's something else that's being proposed, some kind of an amendment. We're trying to tailor this thing to Red Bank. But everything that we're talking about so far that I have heard is dealing with how does Red Bank, what you call the control land use and all that. But from the point of view of the NAACP, I'm the president. I'm more interested in the FHA, the Fair Housing Act. So there's going to be issues of compliance with the Fair Housing Act, and I heard you that points that were made earlier, should not be repeated. I'm going to try as much as possible not to repeat them. But I established the last time that we met here that the planner did not tap Fair Share Housing Corporation, NAACP, Red Bank Affordable Housing Corporation as assets in coming up with a plan. And with that in mind, I proposed, perhaps not very seriously, to the board that why don't we build 80% affordable and have a set aside of 20% for luxury units, because there is no shortage of luxury units in Red Bank. And in response, Mr. Chair, you said you find a developer. So I took that up as the Mancuso challenge. So to try to find out other developers that might be interested. As it is right now, it looks like we have a monopoly that we keep hearing that the New Jersey Transit has basically chosen their developer, which is Den Holtz, and we seem to be trying to tailor in everything to make that happen. But there are other developers, and in terms of antitrust and monopoly and all this stuff, there are examples like Homes by TLC, there's Dykstra Associates, Habitat for Humanity, Homeless Solutions, Walters Group. All these folks should probably be brought to the table, so instead of having a huge, maybe 3-4 huge hives, it looks like a bog ship brought in here into Red Bank. Maybe we need to encourage other developers that might be interested, like Habitat Humanity might be interested in being part of the solution. So it appears that we have now created a solution looking for a problem that we really don't have. But we do have a problem of homelessness and unaffordability in Red Bank. And that is the focus that we should have. I mean, the focus in the sense that we have an obligation that we're going to need to meet. And that brings me then to the question of prospective needs and present needs. And if I may ask the planner, does she know the deadline for the town to produce its HEFSP? That's a question that I would like to know. What is that? June?
30.
Okay. And what is our present need?
154.
Say that.
Our present need is 154.
Very good. And what is prospective need? Our prospective need. How much? How much is our prospective need?
Pull it up.
She's checking.
I'm checking.
While she's checking, I wanted to respond to the first part about unaffordable housing developers. Many of those are great developers. Been involved with a couple of them. The biggest problem is the borough doesn't own the land, so the borough can't dictate what developer can come in. New Jersey Transit and Den Holtz own the land. If the borough did own the land, many municipalities issue requests for developers, and that's often how affordable housing developers come in. When the land is publicly owned by the municipality, they ask for development proposals, they select a developer. That's where you often have 100% affordable or even lower affordability. It can work very well, but the borough can't control that in this case because the borough doesn't own the land.
But the borough can incentivize, the borough can encourage and using its police power by way of zoning and land use, encourage whoever owns the land. There used to be what you call an owner of a piece of land that was purchased by when Mayor McKenna was mayor to create Cedar Crossing. Now, Cedar Crossing is something that is like an ideal of what we would like to have more of. Now, if we had basically put up some kind of a plan to deal with compliance and work towards the June 30, deadline to present something that takes Red Bank away from having to deal with litigation, that's more important than trying to satisfy a developer. And what the developer is proposing to put in there, alongside with some of the ordinances that town has adopted, is clearly creating an atmosphere where this place is going to be turning into some kind of a Martha's Vineyard or a Rumson or a Melbourne. And to clarify that, for instance, the Hispanic community, and I'm speaking to basically to ITSO on this part here, they have brought something to Red Bank that did not exist before, which is entrepreneurship, landscaping, guys running around with their, what you call trailers. There's one guy that even started off with a trailer hooked up to a bicycle and then gradually came down to being able to afford a car. Okay, so now you got all these bog ships that are being planted around here. Can you envision some Hispanic startup trying to set up a self-employment, whatever, dragging his truck with a trailer into one of these bog ships? It ain't gonna happen. Can't park in there. So we've got to kind of put up some kind of a plan that allows a diverse set of housing so that we can also deal with the burgeoning homeless population. Okay, we got to address that. So I'm speaking more from the FHA, the Fair Housing Act, and the interaction of this town with NAACP. The council, and Mayor Portman can correct me if I'm wrong about, has adopted a position that the town of Red Bank will not deal with the NAACP because of its current president. That if we got a different president that would not sue the town and whatever, then maybe the town would engage with the.
Are you talking yourself out of a job?
I'm what, getting there towards the age of the Pope. Sooner or later, I'm gonna be exiting. And I think it's time to start getting the young people in here thinking about the future, because I
feel the same way.
Yeah, so you and I are in the same boat. So we are birthing a new Red Bank, and we got to look at 100 years from now, what's Red Bank gonna look like? The baby's coming out breeched, legs first, and we're still trying to drag that baby out. We need to push that baby back in there and reorient it and have it come up head first. So my point here is that trying to massage this, and Dan, you are very familiar with software and all that stuff. You keep on putting updates and updates. Pretty soon you got a huge mess that's hard to load and all that stuff. Let's do it right. Okay, so I'm basically saying to you that I'm not fully aware of where we are in terms of new developments since the last time that we met. And obviously, there are some changes that are being made. Let's put a little stop to this here, and Susan can make more presentations to the public, and we can more fully address things that we can change to come up with a plan that helps us in meeting our obligations. Thank you.
I just want to address your answer though. So our fourth round present need obligation is 50.
Speaking, I hear voices, right? Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So our fourth round present need obligation is 54 units. And our prospective need obligation is 154.
Okay.
We do plan to submit to Fair Share and a vacant land adjustment, which the planner is not Susan, another planner that we work with is compiling right now and drafting, and we'll be submitting that to Fair Share, which will lower those numbers.
Okay, so that hasn't been done yet. And right now, the proposal from what you call it, Denholtz, still leaves us short. That even after they do whatever it is that they're doing, we're still gonna have to come up with another maybe 80 more units or something. And this is the time for us to now look at collaboration with other developers, some of whom you say you are familiar with and all that. Bring them to the table. We don't want to create a monopoly. It's better for Red Bank if there are competing developers all willing to, trade and whatever. Who knows? Jersey Transit might decide to sell its property to some other developer. There could be some sources of funding coming from other places. We got to do that kind of work and see whether we can come up with a better plan. That is not going to chase Dan, you, and myself out of this place. Because Ben Forrest said, that if he was trying to get into this town of Red Bank today, he could not afford it. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Suzanne? Did you want to say something?
Did you want to do?
Go
Okay.
ahead.
Suzanne Viscomi, 25 Cedar Street. I think I can say this on behalf of most of the people here, that we're not here to be negative. I think we're here to bring ideas, suggestions, different points of views, and it seems like it's working because things have changed. So we're not here to be negative. Number one. Number two, it's kind of interesting, because you mentioned zoning board earlier, and I know it's not the zoning board, but just last week, the zoning board said no to a house because the density of the house is too big on a small piece of property for this family that wants to move their mother into a house, which is great. Single family house, I believe on South Street. But here, we're going above and beyond the density. And I think Dan mentioned the calculation, and even to the meeting before, another woman mentioned the calculation and how we're using land in the calculations not actually being built on. So, I mean, like I say, accounting's an art form, not a science. So some of the ideas you guys brought up, like, so I went around, this was passed, this is on Mama Street, straight up and down, 1, 2, 3, 4 stories, straight up and down. That's not Red Bank. I mean, this is Red Bank. This is right down the street where it's gonna go, a nice colonial, nice house with a porch. This is Red Bank, right? I mean, that's not really Red Bank. This $1 million home, I mean, this is what's coming into Red Bank. And then somebody mentioned the last meeting, well, what's one story? Well, what's the big deal about one extra story? Well, I don't know if anybody drove through like Cedar Crossing. One story, these residents have a story above, and these people are looking at their house all the time. This is one story. Add a couple more stories to it. It does matter. Go down Cedar Street and take a look. It is important in context. I mean, and then the new development that's being built across from, oh, sorry, let me back up. I'm not speaking on behalf of any board or committee I'm on. I always say that, I forgot. But across from the Harding and the middle school, there's that new big place is being built. And I was told, I don't know if I could stand to be corrected, that the low income housing is going to be separate to this group. Separate. So if you're low income housing, you're going to be looked down upon at this construction. Horrible. Hopefully nothing that happens, that everybody is mixed up in the development.
It is generally, the former Getty station you're talking about near the middle school, this board did not approve. And yes, those 2 units are affordable units. And it's been important to us that affordable units are mixed in with the standard units with the same amenities and finishes. So. I'm saying what?
It states it in the plan.
Oh, and it's in the plan. It's got to be on site, and I am not a fan of that development either because of the way they place those 2 units. I agree with you.
Perfect. And you know, again, I think if you actually went to go talk to people on Oakland and in that area, unfortunately, people don't really get involved that much because we have things that have grown. Count Basie grew, great. Didn't grow one more parking spot. I think people feel disenchanted. So again, I think I'm happy you guys are all here, and I hope you guys tell your neighbors what's going on and tell them that this group has actually took in consideration some of the ideas and problems. So I thank you guys for that. And lastly, to add to that, was it Mancuso challenge? Is that what you said? Why don't we use the pot money to pay for the 80% low income and 20% luxury? And
That money is already been earmarked for Parks and Rec.
but you can switch it up if they want to.
The council.
You can't. Just an idea that you can switch it up. 30,000 a quarter adds up fast, and if it grows, why not use it to something that just doesn't help one area? Thank you.
Thank you.
Point that the affordable housing set aside is a minimum, it's 20%. If the developer came in and could make development work at a higher set aside, provide the same types of amenities in public space, et cetera. There's nothing in this plan that prevents that.
Mary Ellen?
Okay, no mic, so I will try to speak up. My name is Mary Ellen Mess. I live at 95 Hudson Avenue. That's Hudson like the river.
You got that?
Just would like to say that I do agree with some of the points that were made by the previous speakers. With regard to the discussion about minutes, I think at the very least, it would have been helpful to have some bullet points of the changes that were proposed by PFJ, so that we would have a reference and able to kind of make a salient argument when we come up here to discuss this. I also agree with Marge that the idea of moving the bus up to West Street is a really, really bad idea. Given the size of the road, the width of the road, and the fact that, you know, there's a stop there so people can try to cross Monmouth Street. There are a lot of things that make that a very bad idea. And with regard to Dan's comments, I agree with him that the parking calculations are grossly inadequate, and a lot of the parking is going to spill over into the residential areas and make it difficult for current residents to park their cars on the street. And I also agree that we should really limit this to 4 stories. If you take a ride on the train up into New York, you'll see that most of these transit developments that are centered around the train stations are limited to 4 stories. And also that there is surface parking. So those are some comments. You know, we've had a young man who's come to a couple of these meetings lamenting the fact that as a young professional, he can't afford rent in Red Bank. And the only reason he's here is he happened to get lucky and found an apartment that he can afford. Well, he still won't be able to afford any of these apartments in this development, because if you are familiar with the income limits, they tend to be very low. So if you're a young college graduate and you get your first job, you're going to be making too much for an affordable unit, and you're not going to be able to afford a luxury unit. And I really think the missing piece here is that middle ground where people can, just normal working people with average salaries can rent an apartment. I personally have a problem with the New Jersey affordable housing policy, which is really focusing on rentals and not really focusing on owner-occupied units, which really has been the basis of the developing middle class after World War II. People were the GI Bill. There was a lot of investment in helping people buy homes. And that really is the wealth for most families in this country, which is now being squandered on overpriced assisted living facilities and luxury apartments, because who is moving in here? For the most part, empty nesters who have cashed in on property that they've owned for decades. They have defined benefit pensions, they have 401ks, and they have Social Security. So paying $4,000 a month for an 820 square foot apartment doesn't seem like a big deal. But getting back to Susan's points, I just wanted to clarify, where is the garage egress going to be? If we're expecting all the computers to park in garages, where are those entrances going to be?
Yeah, that's a site plan.
Okay. Could you explain to me about the balconies, how the setback's going to be 10 feet? So those little stoops there, the little doorways are going to be 10 feet from the sidewalk, but we're going to allow the upper floors to hang over them?
Potentially, you know, it's up to. So if you look at West Side Lofts, there's some aspects of that building that have a cantilever stuck in the upper floors. And that was, you know, that was kind of what we were going for, in the sense that you've got more room on the ground floor where the setbacks are really meaningful for pedestrians. We might have some flexibility on the upper floors. It helps to break up the overall building facade.
All right. Well, I'm not sure. I think that's kind of a flimsy, a flimsy way of kind of saying, okay, well, we're going to give you an inch, but we're going to take back, a foot someplace. Does any of this consideration of this density require any analysis of our water resources here? Because I think that one of the big problems in our infrastructure here in Red Bank is our aging water system. And we've had some significant problems with that. And it just seems to me that we're adding all of these buildings. I mean, there are almost about 75 apartments going up on Monmouth Street right now. There's another 45 going up on Mechanic across the street from another 45-unit building. There's 238 going up on the VNA site. And now we're adding another 400 units plus commercial space. And it just seems to me that this is going to put an enormous stress on our water infrastructure. And are we asking the developer to address any of the weaknesses in that infrastructure?
So this plan is the planning board's plan, and it's a little bit above their purview to look at specific issues of water and utility improvements. But borough engineer will be involved in the process of the redevelopment agreement, and those aspects will be worked out between the borough and a developer in terms of if there's any kind of monetary or fee requirement that the developer would have to pick out.
It would be part of the developers agreement, which is not the purview of this board at all.
Oh, but well, it just seems to me that this whole process is very convoluted and actually kind of farcical because you keep saying, well, we're going to get the site. Basically, Benholz Properties has given us their site plan. And now there's been a lot of, bending around to try and accommodate what their site plan is. So and in our last meeting, council said to the board, this is your plan, okay? But I don't feel like it's your plan. I don't feel like it's Red Bank's plan. I feel like it's Denholz's plan. And it's being shoved down our throats. And it's very upsetting because I do think it's too big for us. And it's going to change the entire atmosphere. And quite frankly, when people get off the train, they don't want to really, waltz around and look at the grass and everything. They want to get to their cars and they want to go home. And I think if we are eliminating all surface parking for commuters, that's problematic because the people who live on Harrison Avenue, the people who live on John Street, the people who live on Prospect Street, who moved here because of their proximity to the train station, are now going to be funneled into a garage, and we have no information on how much that is going to cost them. And I was at the train station yesterday, and the sign says for $4 a day, you could park on the lot there. My guess is Denholz is going to be charging a whole lot more than $4 a day. So I feel like we do a lot of things in this town to accommodate the visitors and to accommodate the people who are coming in. But what are we doing for the people who are already here? And the answer is really not much. But just to clarify, Susan, will there be surface parking for commuters other than that little lot that is on the west side of the train station?
So the language reads, minimum of 150 spaces shall be provided in redevelopment district A in a combination of on-street and garage spaces to serve commuters and the public, and shall be clearly designated and accessible as such. So where those actually are, hasn't been determined yet. Some of them probably will be in the existing Bridge Street lot, which I think is about 60 spaces, but some will also be along the shared street, and then some will be in the garage.
All right, because I don't think that was the answer you gave me the last time, but because when I asked about will there be surface parking for commuters, you said to me no.
That
However,
wasn't clear. The language is there and it hasn't changed.
however, I do agree with Mr. Reardon's comments that it just is not planning for adequate parking in this area. Sorry, I forgot my eyeglasses today, so I'm struggling with my little notes here, but I did want to just, I don't know if these will help. Oh, that's great. Okay. So, could you clarify, New Jersey Transit is not selling this property to Denholz Properties. Are they leasing this property?
I don't know what they're.
Okay.
It's not Ford's.
Okay. And I just wanted to be clear because most of us who are here from the public are expecting Denholz Properties to request a pilot and go through that process. And I don't.
We're not going to talk about pilots.
Well,
And pilots are, again, every time pilot comes up, I know everyone wants to talk about the pilots. The pilots have nothing to do with this procedure and shouldn't be discussed in front of the planning board. So it's inappropriate. The pilots between, it's inappropriate. And I've said, you brought it up before. I've told you before, we can't talk about pilots.
I think
Someone else did. I think maybe Mr.
I don't want to talk about the pilot.
Why are you mentioning it?
Because I wanted the board to know that 3 of these buildings proposed are in the opportunity zone. And that has tax implications for us and for Denholz. And I think that has to be part of the equation. And that's the only thing I wanted to say about by reference.
We're all residents too, and many of us probably feel the same way, but in the state of New Jersey, this has nothing to do with the planning board. So you can all come back to the council meeting when they talk about.
Oh, we will. We intend to.
Imagine Denholz or whoever the developer ends up being is looking at all kinds of financing alternatives, but that's not up to this board to.
And they'll probably be sure to say that it's more tax revenue than you're collecting now, which is 0 on the majority of it.
But we shouldn't get into it. So let's not
Yes.
talk about it because every time
Said that.
Yes, the board members start talking about it and the public's going to get up and respond and it's just.
Father really never gave me this kind of a hard time.
Well, I'm just questioning, the current zoning with the train overlay zone would allow the council to pursue a transit village designation. So we really don't need to increase the zoning to 6 stories. I understand the rationale for the redevelopment designation because this allows this plan to deal with facades and that kind of thing. But I really don't see the point. And I think as probably one of the most congested towns along this train line, we are expected to jam a whole lot more into a whole lot less space than many of the surrounding communities. And I have to ask, why the developers and New Jersey Transit think that Red Bank, is open to being strong-armed like that, because that's what I feel like it is. This has been just the most ridiculous process, starting with the master plan, through this plan, through this, planning board adoption. And then when we go to the council and all along the way say, well, we can still change it. We can still stop it. Well, why don't you do it now? As Dan said, this is the time to put the brakes on. I don't understand why we're just opening the door to more density. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public have any comments or questions?
Nobody else.
Go ahead, Bill.
This is basically the conclusion. This is William Poku again, 90 Bank Street. And I have 2 copies of the Tri-City News, 1 copy for the chairman. I mean, in case you haven't seen it.
I don't know which issue it is or whether or not it's
The latest issue.
okay, probably not.
And Dan Jacobson brags that he was the founder of our new form of government. And I saw how he fought for many, many years relentlessly, turning us from a different form of government to where we are right now. So he chimed in first moment of truth for big Red Bank train station proposal. That's the latest article that he has in there. And he starts off by saying, Red Bank, it's the first moment of truth for the transformative proposed redevelopment project at the train station. Of course, transformative can mean different things to different people, sometimes good, sometimes not so good, and to others, something in between. And then you go on now to page 47, and he uses a bad word that as a Catholic, I cannot repeat, but it starts with a P. So you can fill that in. And he ends up by saying, anyway, the Tri-City News will continue to be a P word as we keep putting off taking a stand on this project. So this copy I'll leave here for you.
Thank you.
As a part of that. And Tri-City News is very well regarded around here as far as their neutrality in stuff. So I leave that as a last comment for this.
Thank you. Neutrality isn't the word I'd use, but he's.
Just for the record, there isn't much that happened
Yeah.
on the short that Dan Jacobson hasn't taken credit for.
Yeah, and then I will give him credit for what he's created
Yes.
and that he still doesn't put a word online. Last chance for the public. Any other comments or questions? I will make a motion, seeing none, I will make a motion to close the public portion of the meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any abstentions or noes? Okay. Is there anything specific that we need to do?
You're-
Someone makes a motion.
No, you just need to, Mr. Chairman, you just need, if the board is so inclined to adopt the, or to recommend this ordinance to the council, that would be the motion.
I have 4 changes discussed tonight that it might be helpful. I don't really want to put motion on first, but are helpful just to summarize.
Go ahead and go through them.
Suggested by various members. So,
And for what?
on West Street, this is about the stoops and the individual apartment entrances to say required rather than encouraged.
Hang on, I'll vote no.
On the shared street, change shall to should. Question about discussion we had about the green
This
provisions.
is his idea.
I think Mr. Lexstein had some suggestion about at the end of the list, the second list of green strategies, those should be incorporated. And then lastly, on the bike parking, increase the ratio to 1 bike space per 10 on-street parking spaces.
That's twice what was there.
Yep. That's in addition to the changes that we discussed at the top of the meeting.
Right. So at this point, I will open it up to anyone on the board. If someone would like to make a motion to approve or to deny this application, I will say
Not an application.
this recommendation for this zone to the mayor and council. I have never in all my years been so influenced by the members of the public. Many times I have been influenced, but I've never been quite so influenced as I have on this application. I guess I'll save whatever else I have to say if anyone would like to make a motion.
So
What's the motion? No one made the motion. Yeah, he just made a comment.
Okay, to recommend it to the council.
There's a second?
For the purpose of discussion, I'll second it.
And you want to open up for discussion?
There's a motion on the floor, so if the council wishes to discuss that motion, they may. If the board wishes to discuss, sorry.
I don't like much of anything about this application besides the affordable housing, which I think is very important, and I agree with Mary Ellen. It helps a very small but very needy population get a place to live. It doesn't help our kids get a place to live here. My son, who will live in Florida until I die and leave him my house, which he specifically asked to have happen, which he'll have to work out the other half with his sister, but we have a significant challenge with people wanting to live here. For the most part, the majority of us couldn't buy our houses today. While this is helping 80 or up to 80 people find an affordable place to live, it's affordable housing. Doesn't make it mean that it's an affordable place to live, particularly for someone who maybe just graduated college or didn't graduate college and is maybe making $50,000 or $75,000 a year, and maybe their spouse is making the same. They're not going to qualify for affordable housing. So those 80 units are very important, and I think we need them. While at the same time, I think we need another 80 or 100 units for people like I discussed. But I don't know that that's the role of government either. And it's happening everywhere. I'm in the business. It's horrible what's happening to prices unless you're selling and moving to your vacation condo in Orlando, which, yes, is secretly a dream of mine. This development, I don't feel particularly good about. I don't feel particularly good about the fact that New Jersey Transit picked a developer without, as far as I know, asking us what we thought. And I don't necessarily like the massing of the building. I don't like the height of the building. I'm glad that we've made some changes, really based on your feedback, 100% based on the last meeting. No doubt about it. But personally, I don't love it. And I'd like to love it. I'd like it to just be rows of townhouses. But I also understand that New Jersey Transit doesn't see it that way. And they don't see that value in it either. And we don't own the land. The town doesn't own the land. I wish we did. I wish we could do whatever we wanted with it. But that's not the way it works. And I have to explain that to people a lot. Like my family, who will call me after this meeting tonight, and it won't be kind. And as I've explained here, if someone left you an acre of land in Red Bank, would you just make it a park or a bocce court, which I would love? But you wouldn't. You want to put an apartment building on it because that's going to allow you to retire tomorrow. So those are my feelings. I don't like it. I understand. I'm not going to be mad at people who vote for it, but I'm not going to. So if anyone else from the board has a comment, you're welcome.
I do. I grew up on Mama Street. I've lived in this town my entire life. Right now, I am in the same place that Dan is in. I'm very conflicted. And one of my biggest concerns is we have at least 5 unfinished business apartments being built right now. When they are all filled, and people are waiting to get into apartments in Red Bank, I understand that. When they are all filled, how is that going to affect the entire town? How is it going to affect the schools? How is it going to affect the traffic? How is it going to affect our infrastructure? We need to take a step back and think about these things before we add another 400 and some odd apartments in this town.
Just be careful that we can't take traffic into account in our decision-making
I know.
about what gets built or not. And we should.
But we can't.
I think it was 1993. It was a dark time.
Yeah.
That the state made that rule. And I don't necessarily agree with it, but that is the law.
It's still in my thinking, and
Yeah.
It's not the primary thing, because I kind of like sitting in the traffic and watching everybody else struggle. This is a little sick puppy I am. But
You did stop in front of my house the other day and just stopped traffic to talk to me while I'm watering my grass seed, and there's cars backing up behind you and no one beeped. I will tell you, I was impressed.
yes, because
they didn't be but little old ladies, you know, we're stupid. What can I tell you? But this is something that we really have to seriously look at. We have a master plan, we have all this, and does it really meet the needs of the people of the town? I'm not sure. And I am not in favor of this at this point in time. Maybe in 5 years, I probably won't be sitting here, but that's beside the point. It might be a thought, but right now, we need to get everything else in order before we can figure out what should be there. Thank you.
I'll go on. I mean, I think about the use of that land, right, and the fact that it's just parking lots, and that's what we're looking at. I think about the fact that we can meet our affordable housing that we're already behind, and that is what I'm looking at. We talk about what it looks like 100 years from now. It shouldn't look, for me, having that look like parking lots for 5 more years. It's such a waste of that space. And to a comment made earlier about people not wanting to hang out at the train stations when you get there, I actually do. I quite enjoy towns that can have a place for people to go right after you get to the train station. When I travel, it's like my favorite thing. I dislike towns a lot when you get to a train station and there's nothing for you to do at all because it's not a welcoming space. And so for me, I think about the hard choices and I think about what Lou said last time. We've been dragging our feet for a long time because people don't want to see change, but change is here. It is inevitable. And so we just have to make hard choices. And I think that it is a responsibility for all of us. And I'm grateful for all the residents that are here exercising their comments. And I'm grateful to the chair and the people here that were willing to take comments directly from last session and put them in. It's been a long road to even get it to this point. And it's not an ideal setting and it's not an ideal thing to have to do. No one is anti-affordable housing, but affordable housing will not be solved by localities. We know that these are bigger economic issues that are happening. The one thing we can do is provide 80 affordable units. And failing to do that to me feels irresponsible. So I would encourage us to consider, it's a hard choice and not a popular one, but someone's got to make that decision.
You know, I am not overwhelmed by the density of it. In part because by counting the right of way of the rail areas, that in and of itself is open space in terms of visuals and circulation.
Giant electrical towers, sure.
Right. And then there is the, proposed walkthrough on Oakland Street, which I think is a plus. But what I would ask is, don't we have a conversation about, bringing it down a story or so? We haven't had that conversation. And I'm curious as to why we don't. Why we don't start digging in to make it a little more acceptable to those that have a different view than I do of the project. One of the challenges I find is not knowing what the economics are. I mean, that's, I feel as though I have a hand tied behind my back that I don't know the economics of what it takes, to do a development like this, provide the affordable housing units and make it all work.
We certainly have an opportunity to ask that when we get a plan. I will tell you that someone has reached out to me about that very thing and said that New Jersey, and I don't know if it's just New Jersey Transit or New Jersey as of the state, there's an Aspire program for financing. And I've been told that without 6 stories, they don't get their Aspire financing. Now, I don't believe that. If someone from New Jersey Transit is here tonight, would like to come up and talk about that, I would love for you to have the nerve to say that in public if that's true. but I didn't like 7 stories, which was the first thing that they wanted. I don't really like 6 stories either. I think the rail, despite what I thought about it at the time, looks great at 4 stories. So if it was Mary Ellen or someone else who said it should be 4 stories, or it was Dan, I love that. I think that fit in better than I thought it would. I think they did a better job building that than I ever thought they would. And I kind of feel the same way, that I might not hate this as much as I thought I would when it's built. Because I think Denholtz has done a good job on the buildings he's had so far, that really, you know, I don't think they're cutting a lot of corners. They look great. And I feel that way about the one across from Riverside Gardens Park. The only time ever in all my years, the council, not this council, overrode the planning board and gave them the density they wanted, man, I was pissed. But that building looks better than I thought it would. So I'm no architectural genius, but 6 stories is just a tall wall for me. So there is some aspect of this financing, the Aspire financing, which I've heard about for a while in New Jersey. I'd like someone to come up and tell me if that's true or not. And if it is true, why can't you go back and reapply 5 stories or 4 stories? But no one's been willing to stand up and say that yet. I'm hoping that someone will at some point, either at the council level or back here later this year when the developer comes with a plan. But I feel completely with both of what you're saying on this. I really do. You know, it's that 100-year thing that I'm really not, that this thing's bigger than anything we've done by a considerable amount, and it bothers me.
Mr. Chairman, if I can, just to Mr. Beebe's point, if the board votes tonight, the majority of the board votes not to send it on to council, the conversation doesn't end. Because it's still a redevelopment. You've already declared the scenario need redevelopment that the borough has. Someone's got to come up with an ordinance of what's permissible within that zone, within the redevelopment zone. The council's asked this board to do it. So if you decide you don't want to send this plan on, the conversation is going to continue, and you're going to revise this plan and come up with a plan that the board does feel like sending on to council. So it's not like you vote, if you are inclined to vote no tonight, it's not like, okay, we go home and we never talk about it again. We're going to have to talk about it at the next meeting. And I'm not encouraging you not to do that, but you're going to have to do it. So this conversation will continue and continue until a majority of the board finds an ordinance that they feel comfortable with, that they can send on to council.
I mean, unlike a lot of the things that we've done.
Right.
You know, we've added more footage on the west side. We've added the individual entryways. We've created larger setbacks on Monmouth. Why can't we incubate this a little bit longer? I hate to, you know, kick the can down the road, but, you know, could we answer this Aspire question?
Listen, I would jump into, because I was going to bring up the height thing as well. There's been a lot of concern from the public, obviously, on the height. And the one sticking point that because crafting the zoning is like trying to find that perfect balance. And when we don't understand the economics,
right,
that's a big missing piece of the puzzle. We want the 80 affordable units. We want I'm for the density. I'm not scared of that. Because part and parcel of that is the requirement for the affordable. So we're kind of maxing that out. When we add in the height, then, you know, to some of Lou's points at the last meeting, there's the balance of open space. Where I have a little bit of concern with the current plan is on West Street and that 6-story wall. And what does that look like facing a single-family residential neighborhood? It's not great. And, you know, we have the walkthrough on Oakland Street. But is there some way we can either reconsider the height along West Street or potentially put some language in there that would maybe require walk up ground floor residential units facing West Street with some sort of stoop or portico or some language like that to kind of bring a residential scale fronting that single family residential neighborhood? I'm just concerned that that might be a blank wall parking area, ground floor level, which wouldn't be dissimilar from the building catty corner on Monmouth Street facing Monmouth, where we have a completely dead block. You know, that's all just parking there, and it's barred up windows, and it's kind of awful. So to the height, I'm still unsettled on the 6 stories, particularly in that area, personally.
To me, if I understood the economics and the difference was between getting it done and not getting it done at 6 stories, I'm for it. No question. But if we can shape it a little bit more, I support that. And not next year, now, move it along.
Well, if whoever made the motion, I've already forgotten who that was.
It was it.
If Itzel wants to, hang on, Lou, if Itzel wants to retract her motion, because that's where we are right now, is we're gonna vote on this. She wants to retract that in favor of spending some more time on it, that's totally up to her. If not, we're gonna vote on this, and then we're gonna end up wherever we are.
If you vote on it and it doesn't pass,
we're back to work.
You're back to work. That's all it is. So
You can either force us back to work by voting no, or Itzel can retract her motion and the second.
Really, what are you changing?
Yeah.
It sounds like the height. It sounds like the height is the biggest thing.
Yeah, like, I mean, I would.
6-story wall.
I'm happy to retract it. I think if folks can talk about what it is that they feel comfortable with, but to me, it's just one of those things where I don't, I don't disagree about the height. I get it, but I also think that it's one of those things where, as council said, like, we have to make a choice. It's going to have to move. And so I don't begrudge taking an additional 2 weeks, but just like Wilson said, like, this shouldn't take a year for us to really get to it.
We've never taken a year to do anything.
I know.
So let me ask, I mean, if that building was lowered to, that area was lowered to 5 stories rather than 6, is that what the board's looking for?
Keep in mind, the south building is already 5 stories.
Yeah.
It's just the north.
I understand that.
And it's that wall on West Street, which if you think about, the building next to Bagel Station is 5 stories. It's a tall 5 stories because it's all lofts. So it's gonna be taller than that. I don't think much more than 5 or 6 feet taller than that, because that's an unusually tall building for 5 stories. But it's gonna be at least that tall, which is very tall, and I get it. But as Susan pointed out, Juanito's is not included, which, by the way, baffles me a little bit. I wanna grab him and shake him a little bit and say, what are you, nuts? Yeah, like the 3-story building across the street from West that the fire was at not that long ago, that new building, that's an affordable building, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, that's 3 stories, so it's gonna be twice that tall. I don't like that. I never liked tall buildings. I've been against tall buildings forever. This would be 7 if I didn't hate 7-story buildings so much. Yeah, that's a tall building.
How tall is Station Place?
Station Place is 4 or 5 stories. You're right there.
Lowering.
4 stories. So it's
lowering it to 4 stories wouldn't make, Station Place looks horrible. And I think we're gonna have the same problem. Smack up against, just like Count Basie.
Hang on, Bill. I don't know Robert's Rules of Orders that much, so just hang on.
I'm afraid that we're gonna have the same problem with a big wall on West Street, whether it's 4 stories, 5 stories, or 6 stories. I think you have to make a major change in order for it to look good on West Street. You have to make it like there's a place in Asbury Park near downtown where it's set back. It's like, it's like old time units almost, but it looks really nice.
You're saying you'd like to take some more time to look at this and find a way to make it look better?
Yeah.
I think the height could potentially work if it's activated at the ground level with some sort of articulation, like residential units that you access from the ground floor, or, some
in the zone.
Try to have more setback. I walk along, I think it's West Street where the Count Basie is. I wonder how that ever happened. It looks horrible, as does Station Place.
Blame the zoning board.
We shouldn't make a mistake.
I did.
Again.
I blame them.
It,
Hold on, Bill was.
West Street is such a
I
narrow.
raised a point of order.
Go ahead,
Yeah, Robert's Rule of Order.
Ever, just say what you want to say.
In order for discussions to go on, the motion must be seconded first before you do.
It was. Wilson seconded it.
Yes, for the purpose of discussion, yeah.
Apologize.
Okay.
Because if it was not seconded, it would die. Okay, so.
I have a little Robert Rules of Order book at home. I should read it.
Right, so at this point, you know, the board members move to split the house and vote, but it's okay to keep on discussing it ad nauseum, but I'm
So,
sorry.
well, next time I have a Roberts question, I'm gonna ask you.
Thank you.
My, I understand what everyone's saying, but about articulating it, but that can be done at site plan approval. That's when you can really define what the structure looks like. That's when you can
But we
say,
can
I
knock it
don't.
down to 5 stories if we
Right.
want,
You-
not if 6 stories is approved.
Right, but if you want to more define West Street, you can say, I don't like this facade. Come back with another facade.
Well, but what does it talk about with facades? We're talking about like
A
the,
meaningful break and.
right.
Yeah.
Well, vertical breaks for me, horizontal breaks, the language we talked about on West Street tonight does require the individual stoops and entrances, so that would create on the ground floor on that stretch of West Street.
Okay.
A scale that's comparable to what's across the street, basically.
So the board will have control at site plan over those type of elements because the ordinance requires it.
Stamp it at site plan. I mean, I have seen redevelopment plans come in, when they come in for site plan, and there are 2 or 3 meetings talking about the details.
Absolutely. I've had variance-free site plans come in and the applicant sits there and says, well, you can't do anything. We have no variances, but that is not true. And they've had to redesign major elements of the site plan because it just doesn't work. So.
But if we specify 6 stories and we don't specify setbacks,
That's correct. You could not force them to come in for a 5-story building if the ordinance permits a 6-story building.
I'm not
Correct.
willing to give that up yet.
Regardless of how I feel on the particulars, this is what is being considered, as you said, as the biggest project that Red Bank has ever seen. I don't mind us taking our time to make sure it works. That's it. So it's been a crappy looking area for how many years, and another few weeks or a month to get this right is not gonna make or break it.
Well, can I make a suggestion? I mean, I don't know how you want to do this, but what the board should, my recommendation anyway, is what the board shouldn't do, if you're going to carry this to another meeting, is wait until the next meeting to come in and have this exact same conversation again. I would highly suggest that you form perhaps a subcommittee that can work with Susan, come up with a final draft that can be presented to the board. And I've seen it before, subcommittees come back and the rest of the board doesn't like what the subcommittee did. That's possible. But at least we won't be having this exact same conversation again.
I think we should have some advice for the subcommittee. Like West Street, it's now moved from what, 10 Street, 10?
5 to 10.
Can't we push it back even farther? Like, what, can't we?
You run into, and keep in mind, we don't have a plan to look at.
I know.
In mind. So I don't know how that impacts the ability to build a parking garage behind it. You might not have turning radiuses to put a parking garage in, which then, if I was a builder, I'd say, okay, I'll fill it with apartments, see what you think about that. But I don't know the answer to that question. And if the developers on the Zoom or they have anyone in the room right now, they're probably having a small coronary, just thinking, listening to us. So I'm sure that they'll have a lot to say. And I'm sure there's some math on how far you can go back where I can't build a parking garage there anymore.
I'm not saying we make the decision right now. I'm just saying we give advice. We would prefer a bigger setback. Maybe we would prefer the height be pushed back on
the other side of the garage, have the height on the train station side.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a possibility as well.
And,
That you might be okay with 6 stories on the train station side. It's really West Street that you're most likely to go.
No, not
I'll leave the board.
well, I wouldn't mind.
I'm hearing no. No, there were a few board members who.
Yeah, I think we'll tackle that with the committee.
Here.
Did I hear you say you're fine withholding your motion?
Yep.
And Wilson, your second? Okay. So, I'm gonna make a motion that we're gonna carry this meeting
Not to the next meeting.
not
just
to the
for
next meeting.
Notice, because if.
All right, we're gonna notice. So for those of you who complained that there was no notice, even though I gave you notice last time,
And even though no notice is required,
right, you're gonna get notice on this one.
It'll be in the paper.
it'll be in the paper. They're not getting.
For those of you who can still read a newspaper. So I don't know when we're gonna carry it to, but it won't be months away. It'll probably be in May, but you'll get notice. So I'm making that motion to carry the meeting to sometime in the future. We have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any abstained? And I say it every time, but I really appreciate everyone coming. And you would not have had the results you're going to have had you not been here. Because we would have approved what was listed on the original plan. Because if no one comes, I don't know how anyone feels. Aside from the people that call me and complain. We have the meetings of April 9th, regular meeting minutes. Does anyone have any changes or additions?
Move the adoption.
I'll second it.
Second, all in favor.
All in favor?
Aye. And then they will be posted on the website for you to critique at will. When's our,
Barbara abstains because she wasn't here.
Yeah.
what's our next meeting?
The next meeting is May 15th, but we have no application.
All right, we have a May 14th on the calendar, but we have no application, so we probably won't be here. Good night, everyone. Thank you. Motion to adjourn. Thank you. 14th, 28th. I will not be here the 28th. I will be